I was driving down the street in my little silver Hyundai, looking down at the $40 bag of Chicken Express chicken fingers sitting in the seat next to me, and a question came to mind. If you are a person who is hungry to get their life together, you are in the right place because so am I. I'm hungry for growth, hungry for self-exploration, hungry to improve myself, but hungry for $40 worth of chicken fingers? I don't know about that. Something about that's not right. And so I decided to just kind of take a deep look at where I'm going with that and see if I can get to the root of 3 areas that I think are contributing. So yeah, I actually come from a family of addicts. My grandfather was an alcoholic, my father was an alcoholic and a drug addict, and my sweet mama, bless her heart, was a food addict. And you can be addicted to anything. You can be addicted to sex, to cigarettes, to working too hard. You can be addicted to shopping. That one really got me in 2022. The thing is, if you have an addictive mind, it's very easy to get hooked on things because there's a chemical in your body at play called dopamine. And when you see something that you want, that feel-good chemical starts running through your body and off you go chasing it. This is actually a good thing. I mean, if we didn't have this dopamine, or what we call this dopamine cascade, we wouldn't exist. If, intimate relations didn't feel good, we wouldn't do it and the species would die out. If eating didn't feel good, we wouldn't do it. So we'd starve to death and the species would die out. So it's a very important thing. But if you've got an addictive brain, it can cause some problems here in the new and modern world. And it's a problem for about 2/3 of the population. We've got 1/3 of the population who is like these people that can just eat one potato chip. I don't know who these people are. I haven't actually met any of them, but I've read that they exist. Then we have this middle category, and I think I fall into this category where you have a person who can eat 10 potato chips, and then they eat 20 potato chips, and then they eat 30 potato chips, and they stop and go, why am I eating so many potato chips? And then go back the next day and buy some more potato chips and feel really bad about it. And then, bless your heart, you have that third category of people that are highly addictive. They eat one potato chip, and the next thing you know, they've eaten every potato chip on the eastern seaboard until they're sick and they're throwing up potato chips. And so we're all in there somewhere, and there I am in that middle category. My drug of choice was cigarettes. I smoked a pack of Camel Lights a day, and I knew I was addicted to cigarettes on this day. I'm at school in Rochester, New York, and it's right there on the snow belt. And so, we're in the middle of this incredible blizzard, and I ran out of cigarettes. And I put on a giant parka and a giant pair of boots and walked 11 blocks in a Rochester winter blizzard to get to a 7-Eleven so I could buy some cigarettes. I knew that they were bad for me. They made me feel horrible, couldn't breathe going up a flight of steps, but I couldn't stop smoking them. And somehow the fear and the discomfort of not having a cigarette outweighed the fear and discomfort of walking as a woman alone in the middle of the night through a Rochester blizzard. And that at its core is the nature of addiction. Because I know I am this way, I always have to be very watchful, yeah? I've got to look and make sure I'm not drinking too much. I'm not eating too much. I'm not shopping too much. I'm not journaling too much. I'm not pushing myself too much, because all of these things have potential to set off that dopamine cascade and push me into an unhealthy place. And so I'm sitting there in the car, and there's $40 worth of chicken fingers sitting in the seat beside me, and that little signal inside goes off. I've stepped into the arena of too much. The DSM-4, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, is a book used by psychologists, therapists, counselors for diagnosing mental health issues. And for some reason, there's a lot of push and pull on this, but they will not acknowledge food as a potentially addictive substance. And I gotta be honest, if you're an addictive personality type or have an addictive brain, you're not buying it. There's a thing about food that pushes us into that category of too far. It feels exactly like what it felt like for me to be a smoker all those years. What is my normal food world like? I've come a long way with eating, because I didn't grow up in a world that was very, very healthy when it came to food. But I kind of, did a lot of reading and research, and I became a person who really eats just lots of fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes, and I really, really love it. I think the closest thing to describe it would be a whole food plant-based diet. So I'm very happy eating this way, doing great, and then suddenly once or twice a week, I'm driving to Walgreens to buy a bag of Tostitos, or driving to Chicken Express to get a piece of fried chicken, or a bucket of fried chicken, or a giant box with $40 worth of chicken fingers. What's happened over time is that little bit has turned into a little bit more, turned into a little bit more. The little bag of like Doritos I used to buy has turned into a family-sized bag of Tostitos that I'm eating twice a week. I would just go and get like one piece of chicken since I don't have much meat in the house. And now suddenly I'm in the situation where I'm buying this gigantic serving that is way more food than I could possibly eat. I'm eating it, it doesn't even taste good, but somehow I just can't stop eating it. And I'm realizing that there's chemistry at work, yeah? There are marketing folks that understand this whole idea of the dopamine cascade, and there's certain things in food that can inspire them. The four big ones are fat, salt, sugar, and chemicals. And we put those things together, and the scientists call that the sweet spot. And they're actually working hard to generate that response in us when we eat these foods. So we look at them, we smell them, we see them on television, we hear someone talking about it, and immediately here comes that dopamine cascade, that feel-good chemical that's pushing us to make a choice that really in the long run doesn't feel very good. I have to be honest, I'm looking at a world where I am wasting 5,000 to 7,000 calories a week on food that is just not doing anything positive for my health. And I can't help but just get a little tiny bit ticked off. There's somebody out there who is benefiting from taking away my right to choose. Well, I'm gonna take it back. I have agency. Yeah, it's the biggest blessing in the world. I have agency. I have the ability to reclaim my position as the architect of my world. So much for those chicken fingers. The hardest part about all of this is the manipulation of that dopamine cascade takes away the wonderful part of it. There are things about food and eating food that are wonderful and joyful. We have, all of us, I think, have memories connected to food that just fill our hearts. And when we eat those foods, we remember both in a physical way and in an emotional way the joy associated with those foods. I eat these foods and I remember sitting with my mother and my brother eating and watching television and arguing about what's going on, arguing about the plot or trying to guess what direction the TV show was going to go. I remember sitting in the kitchen with my grandmother for Thanksgiving and for Christmas, and she's teaching me all of these old world recipes from when she grew up down in South Carolina, and how you can tell the chicken or the turkey is done because when you shake Tom's hand, you can feel him shaking it back, shaking your hand as well. And I treasure these memories. Even my grandfather, who was a hardcore alcoholic and maybe not the easiest guy to live with, I have this one memory of him in the kitchen teaching me how to make fried bologna. And so I think of these foods and they bring back wonderful memories, and they've imprinted some beautiful memories on maybe what was a little bit of a difficult childhood. And here I am now, and suddenly Chicken Express or Chick-fil-A or Taco Bell or McDonald's has complicated what was essentially a very beautiful and loving experience with the pleasure of eating. So I'm going to take my pleasure and my power back into my own hands. So I went back over my budget because, good or bad, I put everything I do into my budget. And apparently I spend about $50 to $70 a week on fast food. And the overall total for 2022 was around $3,500. Now, I really do believe that my budget is a reflection of who I am as a person. Yeah, my budget is the place where I can see clearly what it is I love, what it is I value, what it is I care about. And then here's these chicken fingers on the list, taking up this much real estate in my mind, in my heart, and in my budget. And it just doesn't jibe. I want what's good about it. I want to keep those warm, wonderful feelings, but I need to do it in a way that doesn't sabotage my long-term financial goals or sabotage my current or future health. So I'm left in this place where I've got three things. Yeah, I got a little bit of anger at the fact that there are folks out there that are benefiting from manipulating my chemistry in this way. I've got a desire to keep the positive part of my relationship with food intact without it being poisoned by addiction. And I've got a determination to take those resources that I'm blowing on fast food, put them back into my life in a positive way, and use them to make positive things happen in the world. And I'm going to use my quitting smoking as my template for this. I actually did quit smoking, and I tried and tried and tried my whole life. I tried cold turkey. I tried maybe moving the cigarettes to a further corner so that they were harder to get to. I remember at one point I locked my cigarettes in a mailbox to see if that would help me quit. And I would figure, if I'm gonna walk 11 blocks in a snowstorm, mailbox is not far enough away. And I came up with an idea, and it was not very popular among my friends and colleagues, but I switched to vaping. Vaping is not the greatest choice in the world, but I have control over the amount of nicotine in the vape juice. Now, I was a hardcore Camel smoker, yeah? And so I'm smoking probably a pack more a day. And so I started vaping at 24 milligrams of nicotine per milliliter. And I would just type into my phone every 2 months to lower it by 1 milligram. And so I went from 24 to 23, 23 to 22. And my addiction to nicotine is slowly starting to drop. I had little freak out moments, and I would vape and vape and vape until I could acclimate myself to the fact that there was less and less and less, until I got to the point where I had one bottle of juice that was zero, and suddenly I just didn't feel like vaping anymore because the addiction to the nicotine was gone. So there was just no reason to vape. And I thought that that was a good strategy. And so the first thing I think I'm going to do is just limit my contact with the difficult substance and then substitute it for something that is less awful. And so how do I do that with food? And so the three places I think that I get kind of bombarded with these things are my television. And so every time a commercial for food comes on, and we know they're coming because they always come between 4 o'clock and midnight. And so you just click the mute button, click, because I'd rather maintain control of my own chemistry. Yeah. Second place that I find that there's always going to be a potential for that dopamine cascade is the grocery store, the drugstore, the places I go into. Let's say I'm walking to the drugstore to buy some, a Band-Aid or something. And the first thing you see when you walk in is a big, center island filled with chips on sale. It's intentional. They know the minute you look at that, yeah, same thing at the grocery store. And so what I do now is I just don't go in. I don't go to the grocery store anymore. They started doing that drive-up stuff, during the pandemic to minimize contact, and I continue using them. I know that these systems are set up to get me the minute I walk in the door, so I just don't walk in the door. And that's done tremendous things for my budget and definitely helped me fight my way past that cascade of chemicals. Another thing that I've started to do that I'm going to continue doing is substitute. Yeah, based on this idea, while I'm going to switch from smoking to vaping, I'm going to create a substitute for myself. I'm going to take all these plants and things that I love to eat, but I'm going to revisit some of those flavors from my childhood that bring up those wonderful memories that maybe, Chicken Express might be taken advantage of a little bit. And so an example of that might be this thing that I made so good. It's a hot dog made of carrots. Are you serious? Like, look at this. Like, really look at this. This is a carrot, people. How crazy is that? It was so good too. It had the density of a hot dog, and then your ketchup and your mustard and your relish and a little white flour bun sitting in them, which is just so delicious and brought back every wonderful memory of my grandfather and fried bologna without me necessarily having to eat foods that don't make me feel great or run to Chicken Express. Yeah, and so I think this idea of substituting and finding more opportunities to do that in my diet is definitely going to help. Yeah, so the last thing I came up with to help me maneuver my way through this experience of mine is a strategy for reward that I'm actually putting in my phone. So each day I put in my calendar a question: did I eat that crap? If the answer is no, I put a smiley face. If the answer is yes, then I put a little cranky face. And we see there's one little cranky face there because I ate stupidly on that day. And so I made a note of what it was that I ate, and then a note of why it was that I ate it, so I could use that information to help me take better care of myself than I did on this day. And I love the fact that I'm doing it with smiley faces or angry, cranky faces, because it's just so easy to get kind of down on yourself and feel really bad about yourself when you're in this predicament. And these little things, it's like when you're a kid in school and they put a little like star on your homework assignment. To see the little smiley face at the end of every day really makes me feel so great. And my goal, again, not perfection, because I'm human, so that's impossible. My goal is improvement. And so the goal is to just keep seeing more and more smiley faces. We have more days of them before the next little red, cranky, angry face. And then more and more and more days until I can't remember the last time I had a red, cranky face, because I can't remember the last time I ate a little red, cranky food. And so that's my goal here, and I'm excited about it, and I'm looking forward to seeing how it goes. This is probably the longest I've gone already in a very, very long while without eating sort of junky food. And so I'm excited to share how this progress continues to go with me. I'm hoping that some of these things that I've discovered or that I've experimented with can be useful to you guys, and I really look forward to seeing you all next time.